Welcome and thank you for attending today's session with Charlene Organ, Debra Organ, and Jenifer Fontaine on teacher and parent relationships. Charlene Organ was diagnosed with FASD at the age of 3 and was adopted by Debra Organ at the age of 2. She has been educated in both integrated and segregated educational settings. In year 12, she received the Employability Skills and Achievement Certificate, one of 14 students who received this certificate outside of Toronto in 2007. Later, through continuing education, Charlene completed her grade 12 diploma. She received 2 scholarships while attending continuing education and plans on furthering her education in a post-secondary environment. Debra Organ, a single parent with 18 years' experience of raising an FASD child. Deb is a passionate and vocal advocate in all areas of FASD and has a strong desire to ensure that all barriers be set aside to nurture Charlene's success and happiness. Jenifer Fontaine has a Master's of Education and is a PhD candidate and has worked as a special education teacher, inclusive education teacher, school counselor, and psychology consultant. Her teaching experience led her to return to school, where she is working on completing her PhD in educational psychology. Her main interests include helping students develop a resilient skill set, a hopeful perspective, and successful interpersonal relationships. Please join me in welcoming Charlene Organ, Debra Organ, and Jenifer Fontaine.
Hi everyone, I'm Debra Organ, I'm Charlene's mom, and I'm nervous. The learning objectives that we're going to be talking about today is explore the effective educational strategies from the perspective of a student, a parent, and a teacher, to discuss the strategies for effective collaboration between teachers, parents, and students, highlight practices that have been successful within a collaborative framework to maximize students' successes. We'll start off with a quote. "Everyone who's got where he is has had to begin where he was," by Robert Louis Stevenson. And this is Charlene's path. This is the beginning of her path and how she was able to succeed as a student and a person. And she's been able to succeed with the help from her mother, teachers, and other community agencies. Parent-teacher collaboration, a parent's perspective. During this session of the presentation, I'll be discussing the parent's perspective of parent and teacher collaboration. The foundation, it all begins with a diagnosis. Secondly, understanding the challenges that you'll be faced with and how your expectations become adjusted, not eliminated, because of the various challenges. Fourthly, the educational direction that you need to take and finding the right school, then providing the differences between inclusive versus segregated environments, and some of the successful strategies that we used, and finally, some of the challenges that we had to overcome. One of the challenges that we found in our family was finding a doctor and a pediatrician that understood the challenges that Charlene was facing. You need to be able to feel comfortable with the doctors so that any concerns or changes in your child can be addressed as soon as they occur rather than later. Finding a counselor was extremely important in order to finding one that would support your psychology, your values before you need them is extremely critical. you need to be able to find one before one is needed. Once a crisis has happened and finding a counselor available that already knows your child is less stressful for all parties involved, and the earlier the diagnosis you can get for your child, the earlier you're able to pull together resources to help for success. Once you get the diagnosis, once I got the diagnosis, my first reaction was one of disbelief and horror. I allowed myself these emotions and then realized that I now needed to be strong and focus only on Charlene and not myself. I read everything I could get my hands on. I talked to Charlene's pediatrician and my family doctor, social services, and daycare workers to gather as much information as possible. I realized that even though there was a lot of information out there in terms about FASD, that all the information that was out there related directly to Charlene, and that she was unique. And Charlene even had some challenges that weren't even listed on the information that I got. But as soon as I realized that each child was unique and needed a special learning path, the task for helping Charlene was much easier. I was devastated, knowing at the time of getting the diagnosis for Charlene was not a very bright future. But like every parent out there, I only wanted what was best for my child. After allowing me to feel and understand my emotions, I needed to turn my focus on the final outcome that everyone said was negative and turn it into a success. Rather than focusing only on the cannots, I focused on the how can we. I was not able to change the fact that Charlene's birth mother drank while pregnant, resulting in the challenges that Charlene now faces. I'm now faced with, but how can I change the future that she was facing? The perception of being a parent with FASD is not a very easy stereotype to overcome. Society automatically addresses you as an unfit parent, and the child as someone who's unworthy of care. They aren't going to learn anything anyway. As a parent, you need to overcome the perception against the child and parent as not being of value due to FASD. It just does not happen to children in inner cities or districts or minority groups anymore. One of the ways that worked for us was to constantly emphasize the abilities and possibilities rather than the limitations of what could be achieved. Understanding that some of the challenges that Charlene had was the key to finding ways to allow success. For example, if boundaries or spaces needed to be created for Charlene to learn, then this was what was done. By making sure that time restrictions were in place and a routine was maintained, while allowed for greater successes than if open areas and unlimited timelines were allowed. If one thing did not work, then we searched and tried again, never giving up, no matter how long it took. You can't eat a whole elephant in one sitting, but you might be able to eat a toe. We focused on learning how to read words rather than a page, and then a paragraph rather than a book. And then when we succeeded reading a word, it moved to a paragraph, it moved to a page, and we did get to read that book. The focus was on the success, not the failure, and the word failure was never used in our house, but the word patience was. Charlene was going to learn how to succeed, but the question was time and when. By looking at each learning experience that she had, at being one step closer to success rather than not totally succeeding, the first step was never an option. I emphasized that if Charlene made an effort to do her best, we had succeeded. And we would rework the information over and over, learning sometimes 5% more than the last time, but never giving up, because we were that much closer to achieving what we wanted. I did not take actual school marks as being the breaking point. We would constantly reassure Charlene that I was proud of her, and we would keep trying. As an example, Charlene tried for 8 years to learn how to ride a bicycle. She would be frustrated, and she was not able to succeed right off the bat, but by reassuring her that one day, with determination, it would happen, and with perseverance, it did. And on her time schedule, but not on mine or society's, she succeeded, and we celebrated. Every success was celebrated and acknowledged. By doing this, it engaged Charlene to keep trying. I found it important to constantly tell Charlene that she would get her high school diploma. And it didn't matter how long it was going to take, be it 10 years, 12 years, 14 years, or 22 years. We'd get it. By having set a goal and setting each step small so that each step became the goals within the goal, we were able to succeed and eventually maintain that goal. Remember the entire time that no matter what task was taken to be on, in our school or home environment, our life skill lessons being learned, that it may not be successful the first time. It may be successful on the 20th time, so don't quit on the 18th time. Charlene's educational path, we experienced various environments. The definition of segregated is having only challenged students within the class your child is attending. The definition of integrated is having all children in your classroom, no matter what or if their students have challenges. Charlene has experienced segregated classrooms and schools, as well as integrated classrooms and schools. They've both had successes and challenges in each environment. Charlene was exposed to an early intervention program at the age of 3. This allowed us to access specialists for physical, emotional, intellectual challenges, and it was not only for her benefit, but it was a benefit for myself, and I was able to put my learning cap on. Having Charlene accessed on a daily basis and weekly basis by having these skilled professionals with her gave us a good indication of what her challenges were going to be. I found that asking questions and working with the professionals who had the skills to be one of the best resources out there, because they worked with Charlene and myself on a daily basis, and they were able to bring the successful tools that I needed to reuse at home in order for her to succeed. Having them working from Monday to Friday allowed me a daily accessibility. An important message to remember is that not all schools are right for all students. Having each child develop at their own pace and recognizing this means that you also have to recognize that not every teacher is right for every child. And just with a child that does not face day-to-day challenges, there are also personality clashes and different philosophies that may not be in your child's best interest. It's not a reflection of failure if your child needs to be moved to a different classroom, a different teacher, or a different school. Remember, it's a move towards success. Finding the right school is everyone's responsibility. If the school that you're looking at does not have the tools or the resources, ask. That's the biggest key. It's your responsibility, along with the principal, the teachers, administrations, to ensure that your child is placed in an environment so success can be achieved. Understand that as a parent, this may mean that for grade 1, a specific school may meet the needs of your child, but you may have to move the child the next year. Your child has the right to be successful and in a safe environment. The teachers and staff have the right to earn respect, and you as a parent deserve the same. Every child has the right to an education. There are both positives and negatives, points about inclusive and segregated environments. Some of the key variables in determining the outcomes are the teachers, principals, values, philosophies of the school, and surrounding communities. Being in an inclusive situation only works if the teacher takes the time to be able to read your child and act accordingly in a positive manner. There's a real art to this, as there are generally at least 20 plus children in a classroom. The teacher at times becomes the parent, as does the parent at times become the teacher, and they become the child's protector and role model in the parent's absence. As a parent, the parent in turn becomes the teacher in the home environment. This in part becomes part of the teamwork that is required as a parent and a teacher. The positives to an inclusive environment is that Charlene was exposed to the real world, and she was able to try to bond with all types of people. At times, Charlene was able to find a good person without challenges that would befriend her and not take advantage of her. By being exposed to the real world society, Charlene had been given the opportunity to model behaviors and emotions after a typical child. This raises the bar of expectations and what is expected rather than the role modeling after a child that has limited disadvantages. As much as there are advantages of an exclusive environment, there are negative points as well. The level of acceptance from teachers and staff, other parents, and peers is much lower in an exclusive environment, and prejudices often occur. Challenged individuals get taken advantage of, and they don't even know why, or sometimes don't even know that they're being taken advantage of. You'll find subtle bullying happening on school playgrounds and on buses, sometimes even in classrooms. A lack of understanding that challenged students still have feelings and just want to belong. They're identified as being different because they have that special teacher. One of the biggest challenges is this inclusive environment really supported by society? The segregated environment has its advantages in that there is less bullying and more acceptance. With a staffing environment understanding the behaviors and the comments made by those with challenges, a disadvantage would be that this expectation be a consistent but is not always the case. Again, due diligence is required, and I had to, for every class and for every teacher that Charlene was exposed to, involve myself. Another disadvantage is that this day-to-day environment is not the real world. And the friendships made are not necessarily in her neighborhood, creating hardships for close bonds that the typical child would normally experience. Some of the successful strategies we found were key to achieving successful learning and retention were Honesty. Honesty between a teacher and a parent was major in a relationship to help with Charlene's success. The need to not lay blame, but to recognize that adjustments, compromises, and respect for each other's expertise. The teacher has the education, teaching skills, and no one knows better my child than the parent. As a partnership, the majority of areas can be covered for success. Recognizing the skills and techniques used by the teachers and reinforcing those techniques at home and making them an everyday activity reinforces the process. This also allows the parent to expand and explore different techniques to share with the teacher and will help your child and possibly other children with the same challenges by taking an active role in ensuring that homework is completed and reviewed by the parent. It reinforces structure, importance of repetition of lessons on a regular basis. Understanding that the teacher has limitations is critical in building a positive relationship with the teacher. Even though ideally, as parents, we would like our children to have 100% of time, 100% attention, that's not realistic. There's only one teacher and many different challenges in that classroom and many different personalities needing attention all at the same time. The key is to become a team player and join with the teacher into a partnership. As with any relationship, this takes work, but with a sincere effort, the result can prove to be successful. Having a relationship with a teacher will be able to the child will be able to physically view that this relationship is important and will mirror the same respect that the parent has for the teacher. As a parent, it was critical that I showed an interest in how Charlene was doing by attending simple things like ParentTeacher Night. This allowed for one-on-one with the teacher to share successes and how to overcome some of the challenges in areas that were still evident on a daily basis, as well as to be informed as to what was going to be happening in the coming months. By making an effort to see the teachers and the staff, it reinforced to Charlene that education was something that needed to be taken seriously. Do as I do. Finding out what you can get from your community agencies to access resources and then utilize them to help both you and your child and other students around you. For schools, find out if your child is entitled to an aid. Then push for one. This will not only benefit your child, but other children in the classroom. It'll help the teacher. By getting the proper funding for your child will benefit the community as a whole. Pay now, pay later. By reinforcing successful positive outcomes from school at home, build self-esteem, and sharing successful achievements from home with the teacher and school reinforces the self-worth of the student. In order to make it easier for Charlene to learn and to make it easier on the teacher, I ensured that Charlene had the simple things like she had enough sleep every night and maintained a strict bedtime. And this was critical to ensure that Charlene was able to learn the next day at school. The same with making sure that she had breakfast. She had clean clothes, clean hair. This allowed for the outer reflection of self-esteem and wasn't being able to be picked on for the way she looked. Encouraging good self-esteem was essential in creating a good learner. When something is looked at as a job done with effort and is rewarded rather than a mark, the child has a greater opportunity for success. The education puts a lot of emphasis on the mark and the mark that a child receives. In our household, it was just a guide. The amount of effort used to learn a task was rewarded, not the mark. Many times with verbal recognition indicating that I appreciated the effort and I was proud that she put forth her best. Since failure was never an option in our household, we looked at it as having an opportunity as long as the effort was honest. Then the task was never looked at as a failure. For example, if Charlene got 40% received on a test, this was looked at as 40% knowledge, gained rather than 60% lost. And the goal was just to increase the knowledge. By treating Charlene as a normal child with love and respect and understanding, Charlene was Charlene first. And she happens to have FASD, rather than a child with FASD who happens to be Charlene. A priority needs to be understood. We focused on yes. Charlene had challenges, but this only meant that we needed to find a different route to achieve goals. If one method of teaching was not working for her, then another method needed to be found, and there was never just one way of teaching or learning. If an answer to a problem was not found one way, a different approach was taken until an answer was obtained. This could mean hours or days worth of working, and with the help of teachers, not only in her direct related class, but the administration as well. Never giving up is one of the key and important messages, and patience was always a virtue. Working as a team and keeping in mind that Charlene's success was the goal, and information shared became an extremely powerful tool. As simple as sharing this information, it reduced frustration levels in the school environment, for the teachers, peers, other staff members, at home, for myself, and most importantly, the winner became with sharing information with Charlene. By showing respect to the teacher, and the teacher showing respect to the parent, personal pride at times needed to be set aside in order to recognize that the main goal had always had to be kept in mind was Charlene's success. As a parent, I needed to arm the teachers with as much information I had about FASD in general and what tools in previous years had worked for Charlene and what did not work, making their beginning experience with Charlene a positive one. Throughout the year, if additional homework or lessons were needed, it not only needs to have the commitment of the child to the teacher that this work would be done, but the commitment from myself to Charlene and to the teacher. Some of the home strategies that we found were setting specific times for homework and ensuring that the TV was off and there were no distractions. If additional research was needed, it was made fun by making it a family field trip and an opportunity for Charlene to show me what she could find. Additional homework was something that was always required in our home. As many months were away from school due to surgeries, and understanding of school and teachers was key in allowing us to catch up during the same term. Homework was looked at something as a positive rather than a punishment in our house, and it was allowed to reinforce the daily lessons and build on day-to-day communications between Charlene and myself. If anything happened at home that would hinder the next day, I let the school know. And if anything happened at the school that would hinder something from home, the school would let me know. Again, the more information that was shared about Charlene allowed for understanding and success. Understanding that everyone has a full plate, but it's important for parents to understand that they need to be an active part of your child's education. One way is to volunteer. Even if you can't do it at the school by doing something, do something at home, something on behalf of the teacher. Children learn best through example. And by them seeing you place importance on their education, they in turn act accordingly. Understanding that the IQ is used in the school system, the IQ does not define your child. Even though IQ is genetic, it does not necessarily change the child, even though the IQ is genetic and does not necessarily change, the child still has the ability to stimulate and raise their EQ. Most of the effective and easiest ways to raise an EQ is with unconditional love and acceptance. Some of the challenges that need to overcome between teachers and myself, I found were some teachers maintained a very disconnected relationship. What happens at the school stays at the school, and that information is kept there and is not shared. And again, there's that lack of knowledge that creates a wave between us. And there were several teachers that took offense to be asked to the various techniques that were used, and if techniques were not being used, rather than taking advice from a parent, they took the suggestions as a personal attack. As a parent, you need to get a thick skin. You need to realize that you need to take a few knocks on your child's behalf. And then there are some teachers that just didn't understand what FASD was. You need to help educate them. And there were individuals that you need to tell them that an FASD child has potential and they can succeed, and you need to push for that. Understanding that as a parent, I have limitations, and that the administration has limitations and teachers have limitations as well. Being very explicit to the administrative staff as to what kind of support Charlene needs and what they're able to provide was key. If there were any gaps in the areas, brainstorming with them to see where the gaps can be filled and by whom. By letting staff know that my main priority was Charlene, should they ever need to get a hold of me, I made a point of making myself available 24/7. A phone number was given that I could be reached at, or a phone number of someone that could get in contact with me. Being a single parent at times can be challenging, but not looking at this as either a positive or a negative, it's just a fact of life. And sharing these challenges that may affect certain situations that Charlene was experiencing allows for open and understanding. Should we have had success or challenges with other teachers and schools, this also created an understanding as to why Charlene was reacting in a certain manner. This information, again, was shared with a new school, a new teacher. Being honest was key with administration, teachers, principals, Charlene, and creating a partnership of trust and respect. At times, we were exposed to a school that did not want to have a parent involved directly with their child in the classrooms or with teachers. And teachers knew everything. Parent knew nothing. And they looked at it as being a meddlesome individual trying to put restraints around their child. This created a very stressful situation for the term, but again, a thick skin had to be created. As a parent, you still need to persevere, and if you start to see any kind of disconnection that's affecting your child, you need to react. I found that with an child, you as a parent had to react to situations quickly before they became mountains. It's easier to deal with a molehill. If the teacher will not hear your voice, go to a counselor. If the counselor doesn't hear your voice, go to the vice principal. If the vice principal doesn't hear your voice, climb the ladder. If your concerns are justified, someone will hear you. You can't give up. The perception of the school system when seeing a child's IQ is that some are worth teaching and some aren't. We experienced this several times throughout Charlene's educational path. Some teachers disregarded any kind of previous discussions I may have had with them and their colleagues and started to teach Charlene based solely on her IQ. This meant handing her a crayon and a piece of paper and allowing her to draw pictures during a lesson. I'm not here to discredit the IQ of anyone, but this is one of the factors that should be addressed with challenges. While the IQ is genetic, there is something called the EQ that has a greater impact for Charlene's capability for success. With a considerable amount of love, a positive reinforcement, a stable environment, we were able to develop her EQ, allowing for successes when it was thought that none could happen. Never, ever underestimate the power of acceptance and self-esteem. Being able to only develop academically, being able to develop not only academically but socially is critical for maintaining a healthy adult with a positive self-esteem resulting in the need to want to keep learning. If Charlene felt lonely or socially unaccepted, the need to want to learn academically was no longer a main focus, and she just withdrew. There would be little learning happening, as she would see her self-worth was less than those around her. If Charlene felt lonely, and this was missed by teachers around her as being an FASD, she would be able to mirror any responses that the teachers were wanting in order to gain acceptance. As a parent, I needed to approach the school and have discussions with counselors and administrators to make sure that they were aware of this emotion so that opportunities would arise for Charlene and be given to her in order to take part of. Being unable to make appropriate decisions all the time, friendships needed to be monitored to ensure that she wasn't being taken advantage of. And for these reasons, we needed communications back and forth between the teachers and Charlene as to why this was not allowed. Sometimes the decisions I had to make as a parent were heartbreaking, but necessary to ensure her safety and her wellness. Treating Charlene as a normal child who understands her challenges, allowing dates and outings with the appropriate checks to ensure that the right decisions would be made, allowed Charlene to experience happy times like going to her prom and having a family that's proud of her. I'd like to introduce Jenifer at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. My name is Jenifer Fontaine, and I am proud to say I was Charlene's teacher in grade 1, and I have been able to follow her to this point in time when she is considering entering post-secondary education. So this is quite an achievement, and I'm very proud of her. I am here to talk about parent-teacher collaboration and what Deb and I did to help Charlene get to the point she is now from the point she was at. And I think that's the quote that you started at. Deb and I have maintained a relationship since that time, since grade 1. And so I think most of what we're presenting today is based upon what we did at that time and what we've talked about since that time. First, I'll be talking about general tips for increasing collaboration amongst parents and teachers. Then I'll be talking about how we merged our goals in order to work successfully for Charlene, not with Charlene. Then I will be talking about our relationship and general principles for how we work together. And that included building positive social and academic narratives, using a scientific approach to learning in the classroom, and also having explicit skill instruction, which was critical in helping Charlene. I'm going to start with a quote, and the quote is, "What we see depends mainly on what we look for." And that is what I like to use in the classroom. When we look for positive qualities and assets in a child, that's what we see, and that's what comes out. We have a focus on strengths and assets rather than liabilities or limitations. And that is the key to parent-teacher collaboration. And I'll get into that, although it sounds like it is not really related. It was the key. The first thing I'm going to talk about are some general tips for collaboration, and these are structural guidelines. These are the bones. They're not the heart and soul of collaboration. So generally, things that teachers can do is at the beginning of the year, have the parent write a Dear Teacher letter from the parent or the caregiver of the child, telling the teacher about the child. What are the child's strengths? What are the challenges? What would you like to see happening for your child? This is a way to open up communication with the parent and to let them know that you're interested in their child. Secondly, I think something that is critical is to, at the very beginning of the year, set up a discipline plan. And although this sounds a little negative, it ends up being crucial for the parent and the student because it provides a structure for the child in terms of behavior, in terms of homework expectations, that the child will know what is happening, what is consistently going to happen, and the parent will also understand that that is a consistent expectation. It reduces any ambiguity, and that prevents any problems later in the future, or later during the year. This discipline plan would, as I mentioned, include expectations for behavior and assignment completion, and it would also apply to all students in the classroom. That was critical when working with Charlene, because one thing I didn't want to do is make Charlene believe that her expectations were any lower than any of the other children. She needed to believe that my expectations were the same for her, whether they were or not. Of course, my expectations were modified, but she needed to believe that they were the same. And that was critical. It's important when working with parents to provide periodic updates of assignments, activities, and subjects. And we can do this through agendas, which many schools operate now, through newsletters, and now we have the option of a computer, which when I was teaching, we didn't have that option, so it was that long ago. But that is really important to be able to talk to the parent and have that communication. And Deb and I did do that, and I felt that that was probably critical for us because we always knew what was going on, and there was never any misconception. One thing teachers can do is sponsor learning opportunities for parents. Sometimes you can do that on a parent-teacher night. Sometimes the school can do that by having specialists come in and speak about topics such as FASD and strategies that parents can use at home. The school is kind of a de facto focal point of a community, so it's a great idea for the school to do this. The parents can easily get to the school and easily participate, particularly if you provide babysitting. Homework guides are also an excellent idea, and that's easily set up at the beginning of the year and sent home. For example, allocate 15 minutes a day in a quiet spot for homework. And these are tips that help parents and also help increase the collaboration. I talked about email and agenda. Collaborating with parents, Deb mentioned this, it's very important when you're communicating that it's very objective, and communication doesn't involve attacking or defending. As a teacher, we're working, as Deb mentioned, from a different perspective. We have a number of students, often 25 to 29, with the FASD student being only one of those children. So at times, it can feel overwhelming to integrate a lot of strategies for every child's different needs. And it's important when the parent is approaching you as a teacher to realize that they are coming at it from their child's perspective, and to understand that, yes, their child is entitled to an excellent education, and we need to remember that that's where they're coming from, that they're not attacking us and our skills, but that they are trying to provide us with information about their child, and we can integrate that into our classroom. It's important to ask the parent questions. What works for your child? The parent knows the child best, and we need to recognize that. What works at home? What has worked in the past? What doesn't work? Very important in terms of communication. Those are the bones. That's the structure. The body and heart and soul of parent-teacher collaboration is merging our goals. So understanding that we both have the goal of providing Charlene or any of the FASD students with the opportunity to feel accepted in the classroom, capable and confident, not only as a student but as a peer and a classmate. When we merge those goals, we see that they're the same, and that is what Deb wanted, and that is what I wanted as a teacher. How can we do that? Well, these are the general principles that I followed, and these may be a different perspective than other people might present, but this is what worked for Deb and I. My goal was for Charlene to develop a positive story about herself in the classroom. And by doing that, my hope was that Deb would realize that her development and her success was also my goal. In the classroom, it's important to use a scientific or curious approach to learning. And I'll talk a little bit about that. It's important to have explicit skills taught to all class members so that children with challenges aren't segregated or feel like they're receiving different instruction than others. That gives them a feeling that they're different and not as capable. Use evidence-based interventions. Research shows that strategies that work for students with special needs work for all children. So use those interventions and use the resources available to find them. And incorporate strategies for different learning styles in all activities. I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these general principles. Creating a narrative or a positive story for Charlene is based upon the work of the late Michael White from the Dulwich Center, who says that our identities are shaped when we connect discrete experiences and essentially form a story about our lives. So for schools, the art of teaching is helping students develop capable, positive stories about their lives and abilities. When a child like Charlene enters the classroom with a diagnosis of FASD, often we focus on the limitations rather than her assets. And when that happens, the story that the child creates is one of a problem-saturated life rather than one of an asset-filled life. So what we need to do in teaching is all of our strategies need to incorporate that positive, capable narrative so that when the child is in the classroom, they believe that they can learn. And in my opinion, this is the key to a successful teacher-parent relationship. When the child is coming home feeling successful, I believe that that helps the parent feel that the teacher is doing their best work. In order to build positive social and academic narratives, it's important to strengthen assets in the child. Constantly talking about the child's assets and all children in the classroom is important. For example, noticing, I really like the way you did that problem. Charlene, would you mind showing the others how you completed that? Those types of comments throughout the day are critical for the child in recognizing their assets. Externalize the challenges and approach them with curiosity. And what I mean by that is saying, oh, I noticed that that problem that you have right now in terms of lining up the numbers in math, who has an idea about that? Who has an idea of how we can approach that? How can we change that? This is not a problem that's Charlene's. This is a problem that everybody might encounter. Let's take it out of Charlene and have all the children focus on who has an idea. Somebody might have a better idea for how we can line these up. Joe then might say, well, I use graph paper. Okay, let's try that with everybody. See if that helps. Use asset building language in the classroom. I noticed that you did this. I appreciate the way you. Notice all of those things in students rather than commenting on the deficits. It's very important to consider the individual within the social environment, not just in isolation. The parent is coming to you from their child's perspective, from an individual perspective. But as teachers, we're working in a social environment, so we need to look at the social psychology of development. I need to be able to say to the parent that, yes, these are your child's needs, but within this environment, she needs to be recognized as a positive, contributing class member, not a class member with deficits. So how can we take what you need for your child and work this into the social climate of the classroom so that your child is accepted and an important component of the class? This will help create a positive social identity and social connections. My goal with Charlene was to have her be accepted just the same as everyone else. And so that was what I based all of my interventions on. By using a scientific or curious approach to learning, mistakes are detoxified. So there are no mistakes. We're always on the journey. The goal is not the achievement, but it is the journey. So everyone is expected to experience success sometimes and not other times. We talk about learning styles and see that everybody learns differently. And everybody can help each other with their different learning style. For example, many children are very good with visual spatial skills. They can help the children that are not. The children with verbal skills can help the children with visual spatial skills who may be deficient in those areas. We all help each other. And that way we know that it is a journey and it is not, the goal is not the end result. It is the journey to get there and to help each other. In that way, children with challenges are just a part of everybody else. This is some language that has been successful in using that approach. That is a challenge. Does anyone have an idea? Try that out. Tell me how it worked. Tell your partner how it worked. If it didn't work, how can you revise it? Who has another idea? Those are all examples of asset building, scientific approach to learning language. Also, it's important to include the students in the learning. What do you think would be, who do you think would be a good resource? What do you think would be a good resource? Let's learn how to access other people in our classroom, in our community. Who can help me explain this concept with words, pictures, diagrams, models, and actions? Use the children in learning and use them on the journey. Everyone is seen as having assets, and everyone is seen as a positive contributing group member. It's very important to teach skills explicitly when you have students with challenges integrated into the classroom. Use evidence-based strategies. There are many websites that have these strategies. They work for all children, so they should be used in all classrooms, including mainstream classrooms. What works for a child with challenges will work for all other children. Incorporate strategies for all learning styles. I, as a teacher, had difficulty with visual spatial, so I would call students up. I'd present it verbally and then call students up and say, can you represent this as a diagram? Help me. And that's how you can use students, their strengths, and all of the students, including those with challenges. Using Think Aloud is important for children with FASD. For example, when you're teaching a topic, think aloud as you're working it out on the board. When you're making a mistake on the board with a math concept, work through it out loud. Okay, I came up with the wrong answer. What do I need to do? This helps a child with FASD learn to internalize self-talk, and this can be critical in the school environment. When they hear it every day, all day, they start to begin to learn to do it themselves. The use of rubrics is important. At times, children with FASD will work slower than other students. When you provide a rubric or an outline of the assignment, it will help the child to follow what is going on and take each step one step at a time. As they complete a step, they check it off and move to the next step. In terms of explicit skill instruction, the power of the classroom is that it's not removed from the context of daily life. So for a student with FASD, all of the skills that you teach in the classroom are part of their everyday life, and that increases the chance of them internalizing the strategies. That's why it's important to also have social emotional goals in the classroom, and not just for students with FASD, but for all students. We held classroom meetings every day for 5 minutes in which we learned to solve problems, to reason through problems morally, to solve conflicts, and to set goals. By all students being involved, not just Charlene, this became a part of our everyday life. And it built the assets and the skills in all children. And Charlene was a part of the classroom as everyone else was. All of the children needed to learn those skills, and we did explicitly. I'd like to end with a quote that I think summarizes what I believe is important in terms of parent and teacher collaboration. And often we look at the structure and the bones of collaboration rather than the heart of collaboration. And I do believe that Deb and I working together, we realized that Charlene was the most important factor. And we wanted her to know that she was a capable learner. The quote I'd like to end with is one by Pablo Casals. Each second we live is a new and unique moment of the universe, a moment that will never be again. And what do we teach our children? We teach them that 2 and 2 make 4 and that Paris is the capital of France. When will we also teach them what they are? We should say to each of them, do you know what you are? You are a marvel. You are unique. In all the years that have passed, there has never been another child like you. Your legs, your arms, your clever fingers, the way you move. You may become a Shakespeare, a Michelangelo, a Beethoven. You have the capacity for anything. Yes, you are a marvel. And I hope that parents and teachers can collaborate in a way that will allow students with FASD to believe that they are a marvel and that they have the capacity for anything. And now Charlene will present her perspective on education and parent-teacher collaboration.
Hi, I'm Charlene Organ, and this is my first time doing this, so I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to talk about my success, my challenges, my result, and the plans for my future. One of my successes was graduating from Allied Cairns with the employability skills achievement certificate, and later on continuing my education and graduating from Center High with a high school diploma, grade 12. I'm learning how to make good friends in a safe environment. And this is my story. These are some of the successes that was able to help me through school. Getting to learn in a fun way, learning by working in groups, watching movies after reading the novels, doing activities that reinforce the lesson learned, doing presentations, field trips, reading assignments out loud, and reading to each other. Whoopsie, my bad. Sorry. Teachers are also important to my success. It was important to be able to trust them and ask questions, no matter what the question was. Some of the teachers that meant the most to me were the ones that took the time to get to know me, and trust and treat me well, and tell me that I was a good person, and and I could do whatever I set my mind to. They believed in me, and I also thought they were cool. They never made me feel like a different person because of my challenges. They just helped me. I had an art teacher who believed that I can draw, and as a result, I received an award for my art, for my picture, and it was hung at the Edmonton Public School Board at the head office. I received many merit and citizen awards for being a good person. This made me feel good inside, and it also made me want to continue being a good person. Having Mom encourage me made me feel like I want to do a better job. Some of the things I found challenging in school were doing individual projects. There are times that I would feel stupid and I would get so frustrated and just sit there wondering what to do. I wouldn't even ask for help. I would get scared, and if I asked the person, maybe they might not like to be asked again. Sometimes the kids in school were mean to me, and I wouldn't participate in class. Homework was really hard to concentrate on because I usually take Ritalin, and by the time it was 4 p.m., it would wear off. I was sick a lot and away from school a lot due to my surgeries, so I had to do extra hard work to be caught up with the class. I was judged a lot for my appearance, and so I would feel I wasn't pretty sometimes. But my mom would tell me that I was beautiful no matter what, and that she would also say that the people that told me that I was not pretty, she would say that they would know nothing about inner beauty. I always kept my feelings inside, and I wouldn't tell others how I felt. If a teacher didn't understand what my challenges were, it made it hard for me to succeed. My feelings got hurt a lot because I trusted people and was not able to make friends, and so they would take advantage of me. In the end, the results were that I'm learning to talk about my feelings more often, and that it's okay. I learned how to do math, and I never liked math before, and now I'm really good at it. I received my high school diploma, which made me very proud. I was happy I learned that learning was fun, and I wanted to keep learning more. I also learned that I want to keep learning on and on. I found talents and strengths that helped me realize my dream career, being a secretary. The future, I received 2 scholarships, which I'm really proud of myself for receiving. I'm actually applying to go to NAIT right now, hoping to get in. It's one of the schools that I wanted to get into because a lot of my teachers and my mom said that I can actually get into NAIT and that I can achieve going to NAIT at all. I learned that if I try and be patient, that everything I will be able to do, but it only took time, and I don't have to be ashamed about just taking my time, as long as I can actually do it myself. I want to be treated like everyone else. Just give me a chance. Oops, let's get the page. The message that I wanted to send out to everybody is that women who are pregnant should not drink at all. I don't want their children to go through what I'm going through. Being challenged is very hard, and it's not fair for them to have it. If you are a child that has FASD, or you are someone that has FASD, you just gotta remember, you gotta keep trying. Don't give up. You can achieve anything if you want to set your mind to it. I had hope and was allowed to dream, and with the help of my teachers, my family showing me how to overcome my challenges. I had managed to succeed, giving me the possibility of a bright future. This is only the beginning, not the end. Thank you. I just continue.
Thank you for the great presentations, Charlene, Debra, and Jenifer. This presentation was very informative and outlines the importance of teacher and parent relationships. Thank you so much.